Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. I'm Casey Kidd and I'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level. In the last lesson, we broke down some of the basics of aggressive playstyles without delving into deck archetype specifics. Deciding when to block was a big part of that lesson, ensuring you take a quick moment to validate your thought process and make the correct decision. Part of that decision is controlling the descent of your health points, keeping your opponents slightly ahead of you on the free fall. Aggro Control is an archetype built around providing some additional control mechanics while maintaining the aggressive stance. Let's take a moment to define control in the context of Solforge Fusion. Control focuses on slowing down the game by manipulating your opponent's actions in an attempt to devalue their played cards. When paired into an aggressive strategy, this uses cards that provide the player an onboard presence while affecting the opponent's creatures or interrupts their decision cycle to force them outside of their preferred strategy. In Solforge Fusion, the aggro control player should be strongly in control or downright dominant in the first two cycles, but will start to cede the tempo back to the opponent in cycles 3 and 4. A very important part of this game is determining your opponent's strategy pre-game. If you sit across from your opponent and they are playing a Tempest Necrim pairing, there is a very high likelihood they have aggressive and control mechanics in their deck. Aloyan and Utera have some cards that exhibit these traits as well, just not as abundantly as Tempest and Necrim. We can't cover all the cards that have aggressive or control mechanics, but if you see some of these next cards in your opponent's listing, you had better be thinking Aggro Control. In Cycle 1, we discussed the Windspark Elemental and its ability to strike the opponent while removing enemy creatures. And we spoke about Flamejet and its awesome power to speed up the game. We mentioned some fun combinations with Flamejet, and now we're introducing the Darkheart Sorcerer. By having him on the field, you can amplify Flamejet's effect on your opponent while diminishing its effect on you when played for free. With just one spell and a level 1 Darkheart Sorcerer on the board, you can effect a 4-point health swing. That may sound small, but keep in mind his damage scales as he levels. He loves to be paired with any cards or abilities that provide free spells. There are a lot of really good spells in Necrim that can be paired with the Sorcerer to complement an aggro controlled deck. Om Nom Nom is one of those great spells. When played, you will be able to reduce the attack and health of a creature, and if that creature is destroyed, play a zombie minion. Situationally useful cards like this are the cornerstone of aggro control. Being able to destroy a creature and gain a creature can be a pretty strong play. Even if you don't destroy a creature with it, it can be used to reduce the attack of an opposing creature to keep a pivotal creature of your deck on the board a turn longer. Infernal Ritual allows you to destroy one of your creatures to play additional zombie minions, while temporarily giving them aggressive. In later levels, it increases the attack of all zombies you control. First Instincts often see the aggressive value of the card, but not the control. This card allows you to manipulate your own board state by killing a creature and replacing it with two, presumably smaller creatures, and flinging them into the front row. As we will see in the next lesson, moving creatures around the board is difficult to deal with. Sigmund Fraud has a fairly decent stat line for an aggressive creature alone, but comes with the ability to give your other zombies increased attack and aggressive. The board-wide aggressive ability alone is very strong and can end games. Increased attack is just the extra to make this a very powerful card. Imagine after or Infernal Ritual, then activating Sigmund Fraud to give all of your new zombies increased attack while they're in the front row. The Lasher is our first forged creature we are going to look at, which provides some very interesting outcomes based on his ability. Each level of the Lasher on deploy allows you to deal damage to a creature based on the amount of attack the Lasher has. As Forge Word modifiers affect stats, this can have very powerful effects. An Arrogant Lasher at level 1 can deal 6 damage to an opposing creature. That's enough to take out the vast majority of opposing level 1 creatures. The Pyromantic Lasher, on the other hand, can only do 4 damage total, but it's able to choose 2 creatures at 2 damage apiece. Or you can add that to 4 and deal it to the same creature. I would gladly take the less damage to have more options when directing the damage. Although the stat difference of the 6-1 Arrogant Lasher is considerable to the 2-2 Pyromantic Lasher. The Breaker is similar to the Lasher. It's a forged creature and its ability scales off its attack power. But instead of dealing damage, it gives attack power to another one of your creatures equal to its own attack power. The Abetting Breaker uses the Forge Word to double down on giving attack power, but it additionally provides breakthrough, allowing you to push damage over the top and into your opponent's life force. I used to think of the Stampeding Mongosaur as a card I never want to have to play. When it does come into play, you are required to deal a set amount of damage to one of your creatures to do that much damage to one of your opponent's creatures. The Mongosaur itself doesn't have enough health to survive its own ability, but can act as a pseudo removal spell when needed by killing itself. However, if you have a creature that can survive the Mongosaur's damage, this can be a powerful creature removal while placing a formidable body on the board. For our final card, we are going to talk primarily about an Alolan Forgeword. It's easy to think about creature removal as being dominated by the Tempest and Necrim factions. However, Alolan has access to the Suppressing keyword, which allows you to destroy a creature with attack power below a certain threshold. This is very useful for getting rid of those troublesome utility creatures with persistent abilities. Pairing this onto a stealth creature just seals its place in the pantheon of aggro control cards. Now we'll step into some battlefield analysis exemplifying aggro control. When playing any deck, most players' instincts are to play their biggest creature first. This is doubly important when playing an aggressive deck. You want to minimize your opponent's ability to respond with a scenario that allows them to block and kill your creature while surviving. This will often force your opponent into playing a card outside the lane, allowing you the opportunity for more damage. If they choose to block, that's where your control aspect of the deck comes into play with some much needed removal. The opponent has a very strong response, with a free Electronet to reduce our Stout Glider's attack by 5 to 0. Thinking the threat of the glider is neutralized, they are able to freely place a combat scavenger in an opposed lane in preparation of the next round. We respond with an Inflaming Warstoker to increase the glider's attack points by 2. The Warstoker is a strong threat in his own right, and with low health we expect him to be blocked and killed, but this allowed us to likely push 2 damage through to the opponent. Our opponent responds with a Taliesin to block the Warstoker. Unsurprisingly, it is activated. When activated at level 1 and 2, Taliesin allows your opponent to play a spell, and then you to play a spell. It is most often only activated on these levels during the last action phase of the Forge player. This maximizes your response to the opponent's play by ensuring you get your free play and the next turn's first on-Forge action phase. We respond to the Taliesin activation with our first real control mechanic, which works great in aggressive decks. Stoneskin allows us to increase the attack of one of our creatures, the Stout Glider, and it now battles the enemy Taliesin to remove it from the board while staying alive itself. We chose the Glider solely because it would survive the battle with Taliesin. However, it's worth noting when buffing your creatures, you optimally want to spread your attack power across the board. Because of the prevalence of creature removal, this helps to not put all your eggs in one basket. On those times, when you are guaranteed to push damage into the opponent though, feel free to load the basket. Our opponent responds with a heavy artillery to lessen his damage intake and increase his threat for the next turn. In this exchange, we were able to play 3 cards, and our opponent was able to play an exceptional 4 cards. But still, we pushed through 9 damage on the first turn of the game and set the overall tone of the match. This is a strong start to the game, and we know our control mechanics will find an answer to that threatening combat scavenger soon. Let's jump into another battle in progress. Here we are playing a Tempest Necrim control deck that has managed to fall pretty far behind the race, sitting at a 13-point health deficit to the opponent. As we just saw, aggro control decks can have some powerful turns. Let's see how this deck responds to a difficult first cycle. Our first play, the Spite Maiden. She allows us to take 5 damage to play a spell. This could seem like a difficult decision to willingly move our deficit to 18 health points, but we are approaching Danger Zone and know we are looking at a strong hand with some great tools. Varna's Pact. At level 2 allows us to play a Zombie Brute, and giving an enemy creature -2 attack and -2 health for each minion we have in play. Just enough to remove the Suppressing Assassin. This action phase costs us 5 health initially, but we were able to play 2 creatures, destroy an enemy creature, and trigger the Darkheart Sorcerer's ability to drain 2 health from the opponent. The opponent plays their level 2 Suppressing Assassin to remove the Darkheart Sorcerer from the board and block our Zombie Brute. Now, in our hand, we have some great options. We could bluff with the Stormcaller and hope our opponent takes 7 damage. With such a large health disparity, it's possible, but seeing the board state tilt out of their favor, it's unlikely they will take the 7 damage. Spite Hydra would come onto the board as a 7/8 due to the destroyed Darkheart Sorcerer. That would be a good card to push the advantage. However, Lyria presents a better solution. At a slightly smaller stat point of 7/6, she will allow us to bring a level 1 creature from the discard pile into play to block the Yeti and slow the descent of our life points. I'd like to take a quick moment to engage you, the viewer. I plan to make standalone videos in the future taking a detailed look at individual cards. These 3 cards often provide versatile play and strong combinations that make good candidates for those videos. Please take a moment to write in the comments some of your favorite cards you would like to see in the spotlight. The Uranti Firefist through Lyria changes a 6-point health loss into a net health disparity gain of 1 by damaging the opponent. Just as importantly, it will stay on the board to block the Yeti again next round and hopefully present potential problems for my opponent in the next turn. The opponent's last action phase is used for a Gauntlet of Solgrim to destroy the Gloom Reaper Hag and give his assassin the armor needed to survive combat. At the conclusion of this turn, we have turned a 13-point health deficit into a 6-point lead. That was a 19-point health swing that started with us choosing to lose 5. We also have a slight board state edge in comparison to the opponent and are in a strong position to decisively close down this match with a couple more aggressive turns. Today we covered the amazing blend of the aggressive and control archetypes and were able to see some of those cards in action on the battlefield. Keep in mind some of these tips and strategies to use against your opponent or to understand their deck's capabilities from the beginning of the match. Our next lesson is going to focus on the difficult to master mobility synergy decks. I love playing mobility decks and flying my creatures around the board, leaving my opponent confused with the possibilities these decks can do. Get ready to dig into some of the Alolan staple cards of this strategy and some of their supporting cast members. Thanks for attending this lesson with Forgeborn Finishing School. If you liked this video, please subscribe, comment, and consider donating to our Patreon account. I'm Casey Kidd, and I look forward to our next lesson.